So now I think there was another story in your book, which is on the slimmest watch in the universe. And now to think of a group which is, and look at the stories that we have covered, sir, today. We have spoken about a dam at Walhan. We have spoken about a passenger car. We have spoken about a space traveler and an aviator. And now we are coming to the watches, yeah, which also is a reflection of the huge canvas of business operations that the Tata Group has. And to think that an Indian company would come forward in a competition, in an arena where the Swiss have a very strong foothold, and to think that an Indian company would come forward and design the slimmest watch in the universe. That is indeed remarkable by all standards. And we are glad that we have Mr. BG Dwarkanath, on whom I would request Mr. Harish Bhatt to kindly give a brief introduction. I believe that Mr. Bhatt met Mr. Dwarkanath when Mr. Bhatt himself was a young probationer with the Tata Administrative Service. Sir, could you please introduce Mr. Dwarkanath to us?
So Girish, it now gives me, the greatest of pleasure to introduce our guest speaker on the show and the pioneering story that he led, which is captured in my book, Tata Stories, which is the story of a very, very special watch. This is my favorite watch, Girish, if those of you who can see it. And this is my wife's favorite watch. Both these watches, both mine and my wife's favorite watches, belong to a family of Titan watches called the Titan Edge. These are the slimmest watches I've ever come across and the slimmest watches in the universe. They're also very, very light, about 14 grams, I think, or even less perhaps. I love this watch. I wear it every day. And my wife was telling me just yesterday that it's her all-time favorite watch. She was discussing it with her mother. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Girish, the person who led the development of the Titan Edge. Mr. BG Dwarkanath, who will shortly appear on our show. I call him BGD. That's what everyone in Titan and the Tata Group refers to him as. He's an inspiration to all of us. But I think the story of the Titan Edge is best narrated by the creator of this watch, Girish. So over to Mr. BG Dwarkanath and yourself for one of the most fascinating stories I have heard.
Welcome to the show, Mr. BGD. We are very happy to have you here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Girish, and thank you, Harish, for having selected this story to come into your book. I know that I think is a great feeling. I cannot explain that feeling. To see that this story is among one of the best stories of the Tata Group. I am very grateful to you. I'm also grateful to Titan, for Titan has given me the opportunity to do this development. The trust that Titan has shown in this entire development work.
So for the benefit of our viewers, I would like you to narrate to us the story right from the time that you got this idea to the time that you went to and met Mr. Justice Desai, the approval that you got, that you put it, and till the time that you went and gifted the first watch to Mr. Ratan Tata. So please take us to the entire story. We would love to hear it from you.
Sure. I think I should give you a little background of why we started this development of this slim movement. Earlier, maybe 4 years earlier, we had developed a movement which is about 2 millimeter in thickness and reduced it to about 1.75 millimeter in thickness. Because the standard movement that is available in the international market are generally in the range of 2.5 millimeter for a two-hand watch, and then about 3 millimeter for a three-hand watch, and about 3.5 to 4 millimeter for a watch which displays day and date. So this the design for this kind of movement we had already got from our collaborators, French collaborators, France watches at that time, and we had already produced it. Knowing the importance of introduction of new products in this lifestyle business, we were very sure that R&D is very important, and we had established an R&D department. Our idea was that we should do something which others have not done, and therefore we took up the development of a slimmer movement of a thickness of 1.75 millimeter compared to the 2 millimeter that we used to have. And we were very successful in making that, for which we got the DSIR award in the year 1996. This encouraged us a lot. And then that, our R&D team, came together, and then we discussed and said that if at all we do something, it should be world class and it should be a world beater, and it should raise the eyebrows of the people in the watch market. So with this background, we started doing a benchmarking of the various movements available in the international market, and we found out that a company called Concord had come up with a slimmer movement. Companies like Citizen, companies like the ETA group belonging to this watch group, they had come up with a movement. ETA had a movement, for example, of 1.15 mm. And the false statement in that is that when the battery is put into the movement, the thickness of the movement would increase. So that's not a fair thing. So our design was that we should, when we say that the movement is a 1 millimeter thick or a 1.5 millimeter thick, it should be uniform throughout, not that the battery pops up. That's we thought was unfair. And we thought that if at all we do, we should do something like 1.15 millimeter. The constraint for this was the availability of the battery. The thinnest battery was available at that time was 1 millimeter. If there were to be a battery which was available at, let's say, 0.5 millimeter, probably we would have done much better. Here, the constraint was that the 1 millimeter was the constraint of the battery, and the quartz crystal, which really regulates the timekeeping accuracy of the watch. The smallest quartz crystal available at that time was again 1 millimeter in thickness. And with this basic input, we started designing the configuration. And then we thought a movement could be manufactured or designed with a thickness of 1.15 millimeter. With this basic concept, myself and then my colleague, Mr. Bhatt, who headed the R&D at the department, we went to Mr. Desai, explained to him, yes, we have been successful earlier with development of a 1.75 millimeter movement, and for which we have got the DSIR award and things like that. And the watches made using this movement has done very well in the Indian market. So why can't we look at doing this slim, ultra slim movement, which would be a world beater and which would really raise the eyebrows in the international market. Mr. Desai was patient. He went through all the details, made comparisons with the other international movements that were available and things like that. And he asked us, people like Concord have already made such watches. He said Concord has made watches, but it is all museum piece watches. They were not highly reliable. They were so thin that when you wear it on the wrist and then tie the strap, the watch would slightly buckle, and because of the buckle, the watch would stop. So whereas we were determined to make a highly quality and highly reliable watch. Mr. Desai's eyebrow went up obviously, and then he just in one single shot, he said, go ahead and make this world beater, and my support is there for it. Whatever resources that are required, please go ahead. That is how we got the approval from Mr. Desai in one shot. That shows the amount of confidence he had and his flair for innovation. His flair for innovation and the support to R&D, I think that is unforgettable. And the kind of support that we got from the senior management is, I think, one of the critical success factors for the success of this age movement. So later on, we came back with high spirits, formed a small team. Now I think I should start talking about the challenges that we faced. First challenge was selling the concept to our own team, because obviously they were all skeptical. So people are always comfortable in doing more of the same.
Thank you so much, Mr. BGD. That was quite interesting to know. Could you also tell us about the challenges that you faced while going about designing the watch, conceiving it, and then putting the team together and finally bringing it out?
Yeah, as I said, we were all quite excited with the approval that we got from Mr. Desai, but there were a lot of challenges ahead. The first challenge is to sell the concept to the people, because people are always comfortable in doing more of the same, whereas here is something that we wanted to do which nobody else had attempted. Putting the team together was another big challenge. So normally when you ask for a team to be formed, the people will generally spare people, will give people who can be spared, whereas we wanted people who are the best people so that the project is completely successful. The Main factor, as I mentioned earlier, was identifying a good battery because it's the energy density which decides the life of the battery. And we were able to source a 1 millimeter battery from Union Carbide. That was the first challenge. The biggest challenge, the next challenge was designing the stepper motor. Earlier, we had got some technical collaboration with a company called Adamar for manufacturing of stepper motor for our standard movement. The movement is the inside mechanism that is used in the wall. The standard movement that we were manufacturing having a thickness of 2.5 millimeter or 3 millimeter, for which we had got the collaboration from this company called Adamar. So after series of deliberations, we decided that we should get this stepper motor from this company Adamar because three important things are there. Number one, the stepper motor must be as thin as possible. Number two, it must consume very, very less current because the entire battery life depends on that. And it must generate the necessary power to drive the hands. So these constraints are there, and it is quite a complex process to design the stepper motor. And therefore, we sought the help of Adamar. After this, the rest of the components were all in-house only. Only the stepper motor and the battery we had to import, and the rest of the components, maybe 30 to 40 components, were all made in-house. The challenge here is again, one of the dimension. See, when in watch industry, we talk of dimensions in microns. Just to give you an idea, human hair is of 60 microns thickness. So we are all we talk here dimensions. The wheel thickness is 120 microns. That's just about twice the thickness of human hair. The pinions, the pinion diameter itself is less than 1 millimeter. On that, there are some 8 to 10 teeth cut on that. The wheels that are used in this watch, a normal watch may have a wheel of thickness 150 microns. 150 micron is just more than double the thickness of human hair. Whereas here we were talking of thickness of 100 microns, and on that about 60 to 70 teeth has to be cut. First of all, designing this, next handling these kind of thin products and producing them absolute standard. When they are so thin, it can buckle and things like that, and which will add to dysfunction of the watch itself. Achieving all this was a great challenge. So there were a lot of apprehension from people. How can we make this? How can we make these kind of things? So the only word that I used was that I want all of you to be a part of the success story. And that really motivated, and people were thumping the table and they said, yes, we are here to take the challenge. So that's how we brought the people into that. And everybody was so excited that they wanted to be a part of this success story. Coming to the stepper motor itself, the current consumption is so low, again, here we talk, if you take a normal bulb, we take current consumption in terms of amps. Whereas here we talk of microamps. An ampere divided by 10 to the power of 6 is 1 microampere. So the current consumption should be so low so that it guarantees the necessary battery life. But this current consumption should be enough to deliver the torque that is required to drive the hands. That's a big challenge. So designing that itself was a big challenge. To give you an idea, the power consumed by a 40-watt bulb in 1 hour is enough to run this watch for more than 50 years. So that's the kind of dimension we are talking about. The stepper motor is again made with a coil. Coil is wound, The wire diameter is again 1/3 human hair thickness, 20 microns, and it is wound on a coil to make the coil, which has got some 10,000 tons. So imagine making 10,000 tons coil with a human hair thickness of just 1/3 of human hair thickness. These are all the kind of challenges that were faced. But as I said earlier, wonderful team we had. Finally, the success of the entire project is because of the good teamwork that we had. We had people we were very sure the team was cutting across the entire manufacturing process. We had people from design, we had people from R&D, we had people from manufacturing, we had people from appearance part design, we had people from tool manufacturing, we had people from case manufacturing, we had people from purchase department, and we were meeting almost on a daily basis to review this, to review the progress and then discuss the challenges that were there, and coming out with workable solutions right and there itself on war footing. That I think was a critical success factor.
Mr. Dwarkanath, as you narrate the story, it would also be helpful to have a look at the watch if you have it with you.
Yeah, sure. It's my pride to show this watch. Here is the watch, which is the inside mechanism is, as I said, is just 1.1
Wow.
thickness.
Right.
And the watch is 3.5 millimeter in thickness. It is waterproof up to 3 atmosphere. 3 atmospheres means that even if you immerse this watch in water up to a depth of 30 meters, it is water resistant. A lot of tests were done, because for a product, I always feel that 3-4 things are very important. First of all, quality. Next, it is reliability. Next, it is availability. And last is serviceability. All the 4 are very important. Quality, reliability, availability, and serviceability. So we had always kept the service aspect in our mind. The watch should be serviceable. So we had come out with a special watch, special wall construction for putting up the back cover to make this 3 ATM waterproof case. So the back cover should be easily openable and closable, however, ensuring the water tightness again after the battery replacement or whatever.
Yes, sir, could you also tell us about the response of Mr. Ratan Tata when you gifted him the watch for the first time?
Yeah, in fact, I was not present when the first watch was presented to him, but the way he admired it is what to follow. Subsequently, earlier also I had met him a number of times, and then I met him again when he wanted this watch to be gifted to various dignitaries, and he called it as the Tata watch. And he was the fact that he made Titan to make 2,000 watches with the Tata logo and the Tata name on it. Itself, I think, is a testimony to how he liked the watch.
Very true, sir. Very true. And thank you once again for joining us on this session. We are very delighted to have you here. Thank you also, Mr. Bhatt, for your time and for being with us today afternoon. We appreciate and deeply value the same. Viewers will be back again the next time with another episode of Tata Katha. Thank you so much for being with us today.